Welcome back to Nikki's Scrapbooking Adventures. Today I'm here with Melanie for Calling Creatives. Hey, Melanie.
Hi, Nikki. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Look at my hair. It's all cut up.
I know. When I saw you, my jaw just dropped. I was like, wow, that was like a radical change.
It is a radical change. I'm ready for summer. So, yeah, just thought I would address that since it is a drastic change.
Well, it's super cute, and I'm sure you'll appreciate it once the weather starts warming up.
Oh my goodness. Would it just warm up and stay warm? We had 86 and then 56, like within 2 days.
Wow, lots of flip-flopping. We actually surprisingly have not really warmed up here. We're hovering, I think, around the 70s, which is great. I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining.
Yeah. So I'm wearing long sleeves today, and like 3 days ago I was wearing shorts and a t-shirt. So
Hello,
definitely
spring, right?
Yes, that's spring. But anyway, we're talking about journaling today for our topic with Calling Creatives. On Monday with Melanie's channel, we talked about if we journaled, why we journaled, the format. So definitely go check that out. We both journal. I journal about 90% of the time on my layouts. Melanie says she journals pretty much every single time, right?
Yeah, I put something on it. Almost rarely don't. But now, as to whether or not my journaling is creative, that's a whole other story. But you'll have to check out Monday's call because I talk about it a lot over there.
Yeah, we had some good conversations over on Monday. So let's dive right into the different styles of writing or types of writing. I purchased the Writing to Remember book by Allison Davis from Scrapbook Generations. And it's a huge book with 6 different sections all about journaling. And the first section is kind of the intro and talking about how you journal, what you journal, all that kind of stuff. And one of the things that she brings up is the different styles of writing. So the styles of writing that she mentioned were everyday, comparison, list, creative writing, songs and quotes, interviewing, emotion, travel log, conversation, social media, perspective, and then just the fact. So today what we're going to do is kind of go through each of those styles and talk about them. And I'm going to provide examples.
I think that's awesome. Some of them sound familiar. I'm sure I have used some of those over my vast, I don't know how many years are we working up to here, like 35 years of scrapbooking. But some of them I'm intrigued by. I'm curious what she means by it. I'm hoping you have examples to share.
Yes, I have almost examples of everything. But first, I kind of want to talk about format. So we talked a little bit about this on Monday, where there's different formats of your journaling, right? You can do strips, blocks, hidden, shape, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to show you kind of an example of each of those, except for the shapes. I don't journal in shapes like a heart shape or a diamond or a square. Do you journal in shapes?
That feels a little circa 1995.
Yes.
I probably have back in 1995. And in fact, I think Creative Memories, I might have some of their journaling templates
Yeah.
where like they basically give you the lines you can write out, and they would have some different shape ones. I think they had like a balloon and a heart or ovals or stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know that I necessarily have specifically journaled in a shape other than, like I said, 1995-ish.
Right. And that's another thing. I don't put my photos in shapes hardly ever either, unless it's an oval or a circle, a square or a rectangle. Like I don't do stars, I don't do diamonds. Like it is rare for me to change the shape of my photo.
Yeah, I would say I'm the same. Again, that early onset was really to cut things into shape. But you have to remember back then we had nothing, like there was no die cuts. There literally was nothing. Yeah, I mean, it's quite funny to think about my vast craft room now and all the stuff I have versus when I first started. It was literally a package of 25 plain cardstock of 8.5 by 11 and some templates to cut out some funky shapes.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah,
That's a big difference. But you've been collecting for 35 years or whatever you said it was.
Yeah, exactly. And you can tell. You can
Yeah.
tell.
But anyway, we also talked about how sometimes I use the title of my layout as my journaling. And I've got an example of that here. So this was a design team layout I did, and you can see it says Pop It, which is exactly what my son's doing in the photo. So I feel like this doesn't need journaling.
Right.
He's just trying to pop the treble board. And that's all he's doing. And so my title pretty much says it all.
Yeah. Now
Um,
you still include his name and age on the layout, correct?
no, so I just did the date, July 3rd of 2023. And that was it. Like, and it was all on the same little block here.
Okay. Well, and to be fair, this is probably going to go in his album, all
Yep.
about him anyways. So people would know from a context that that's who that is. So that's,
Yep.
I can see that it's not as critical to necessarily put his name on everything.
Now, going through my layouts, there are some that I didn't put journaling on that I thought my title was enough, and I don't think it is. So I'm wondering if I need to go back and add some journaling. An example is this one right here. I didn't put any journaling on it, and my title is kind of scattered throughout, and it's 1, 2, 3 because my son is trying to count with his fingers for the first time.
Oh, okay.
So I repeated 1, 2, 3 in here, down here, and then up here as well. So 1, 2, 3
Yeah.
is kind of my title.
I don't know that I would have gotten that there was the connection. I mean, now that you point it out, that totally makes sense to me. But I immediately thought, oh, you have 3 photos. 3. That's the connection I immediately got.
Yeah, so I think in this case, I do need to add journaling because in the photos, he's literally going 1, 2, and then 3, trying to make that hand gesture.
Yeah. I think that's a good point too, though. When you're saying you went back and looked and realized that you were missing journaling, I think that's good to know. Just because you did a layout and you perhaps didn't include journaling, or maybe you put journaling that you would now, looking back, change or add to, there's nothing that says you can't do that.
So,
right?
But I also don't want to like pull out all my layouts that don't have journaling and add it.
Well, no, and I don't think you need to. I don't think you need to. I think it's one of those things that if it jumps out at you, like if you're going back looking through his book and you're going, oh, this evokes way more emotion, for instance, than I'm portraying in what I have on here, then maybe that's the impetus to do it. Or if you're looking at a page and you're going, what? I don't really remember why I did this page. Maybe that's an impetus for you to do some additional journaling. But I don't think you need to do that for everything. I think just let the moment rise if it needs to.
Good point. Good point. Another thing that I don't do very often is hidden journaling. I put all of my layouts into page protectors. So hidden journaling really has to be creative so that you can pull out. And it usually has to be towards the top of the layout, like the mechanism or whatever. So this is a hidden journaling example, and I really had to get creative, right? This is a Christmas tree with shaped photos like Christmas ornaments, and then my journaling is a pull tab.
Oh, that's cute. I love that.
I did this because my husband, I don't know if you can see in the top here, was opening a box that was massive with balloons. And on the end of one of the balloons, it says it's a boy.
Ah.
And so, this is the
Yeah.
present opening, and it says, for Christmas 2020, I surprised Joe by revealing our baby's gender. He thought it was a girl and was shocked.
That's awesome. I love that. The mechanism that you used, it works well when it's still in a page protector, right? Like the bow doesn't get hung up or anything.
Yep. So this is on like a really heavy piece of cardstock.
Okay.
And it just slides up and down.
So there's a couple of reasons, or a few reasons I can think of why you would want to do hidden journaling. One, to emphasize the story. So in your case, it makes sense because it was a surprise, right? So the journaling reinforces the fact that it was a surprise. You may also do hidden journaling because you don't want everybody to read it.
Yes.
Right? And I think it's okay. I've done this on some of my pages where I've created a pocket on the back of the layout and I've tucked the journaling in there. And in order to access it, you literally have to pull the page out to access it. But I'm okay with that because it really is not intended for the average user to read, and that you need to work to get to it. And I think that's okay. Now, the question, of course, is how do you denote that journaling is? I don't. Like, again, it's for me, it's there, I know it. Maybe at some point when someone's dismantling my books or whatever, they'll discover it. And at that point, I won't care if somebody is reading my journaling, because obviously I must have felt there was a reason to include it. But
I actually have an example later on. We'll talk about it.
okay.
Where it was the hidden journaling thing and I didn't want, you
Yeah.
don't know it's there, and I'll show you.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny.
Yeah. I've also done hidden journaling where I've cut the page protector.
I've used my fuse tool,
Yeah.
and it was like a flap, and so the journaling is on the back of the photo that was inside the pocket.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I
that
just
was
cut it
meant
so
to
that
be
like I
that.
have the tag or whatever, so it pulls up through the slot. I always worry that the page protector is gonna like rip or
Yeah.
something. But at the end of the day, my albums are not. There's not a lot of traffic, so it's gonna be fine. It'll be just fine.
Yeah.
The other thing I do that quite often as hidden journaling is if I do a big event where there's lots of people, I don't like putting everybody's names with everybody's photos. Do you know what I mean? Like on the scrapbook layout, because I don't think aesthetically that looks so great. But I also think it is important to document who's in the photos at some point, because how many of us have ancestry photos that we don't know who the people are? And so what I will do is I'll flip the layout over, and where the photo is, I'll actually write the names on the back side so that if you want to know who the people are, the name is at least written somewhere on the layout.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was just thinking it'd be kind of fun to have your 4x6 photo and then just a little piece of paper you pulled out from
That would be
behind
a good idea.
But page protectors, man, they're like, for hidden journaling is really hard.
Yeah.
Really hard.
That makes it hard for interactive journaling. I mean, the flip, what do they call the flip flaps or whatever those plastic things are? I mean, they're great, but aesthetically, they still aren't quite the same as if you had an out of the page that had interactive elements.
So the next one that is probably like of my 70%, probably like 30%, I use strips. And so what I do is I cut a piece of paper down with 1/4 inch strips, and I write in my handwriting in all capitals like we talked about on Monday. So it's legible and it just kind of fits in a cluster or wherever I'm going.
I love using strip journaling. I think it helps if you didn't leave a block to put your journaling in. It's a little bit easier to fit it in because it doesn't have to be perfectly aligned. You can make it fit. Yeah.
And this is another example where I used a lot of strips. It kind of goes in and out around my photo and really stands out against everything else because it's white instead of red and black. That's another example. If you ever want me to read these, you got to tell me. I'll read them. My most used is the block because I have scrap paper right above my desk and I write it out and then I place it on my layout in an aesthetically pleasing area. So I usually do my journaling at the end because I'll fit my journaling in somewhere.
So you don't necessarily plan for it when you're doing your layout.
I try to, but it doesn't always happen.
Fair enough.
So this is a block down here. And I will draw in pencil the lines to follow and then erase it most of the time.
Okay.
Sometimes you'll be able to actually write it in pen, but I try not to. I like the look of no lines compared to look of line.
As we talked on Monday, it allows you the opportunity to write it out. And if you make a mistake, you can rewrite it and easily reconfigure. Do you ever use Project Life Card?
I'll use shaped ephemera. For example, like on this one, which is actually a different one. This was an ephemera piece that was a notebook. It has a little notebook.
Okay.
So that's like my journaling. I don't typically write directly on the page. That's probably like 5% of the time is when I'll write on the page. I know you like to write on the page, right?
Yeah, and that's because I just tend to fit it in wherever, as opposed to trying to find a block to fit in afterwards. It's just easier to just kind of in and around, just jot it down a few lines. Usually that's what happens.
Do you use your T-square ruler to get them straight, or do you just not even care?
Depends. I've done both. I've also done the Allie Edwards style of journaling where she writes and then does the pencil, or like the line. She actually writes the lines in afterwards. Have you seen that?
No, that sounds horrible.
It's totally sloppy, but of course her still looks cool. I've done that and I don't hate it. I don't always like it. So it's one of those things where because it looks cool the way she does it, I'm trying to emulate it, but my writing style and stuff is not quite the same. At the end of the day, it just doesn't bother me enough to worry about being perfectly square and that kind of stuff. If it did, I probably would do more typing.
That's a good point. With handwriting, there's always the chance that it'll get a mess up. But that's why I like my blocks too, because I can write down my lines, erase them, replace
Mhm.
them if I need to. If I make a mistake and I've written directly onto the layout, I have to start the whole thing over again, and I don't want
Well, or you just use a block then to cover it and go from there.
no, no. So those were kind of the formats that I used. Now let's talk about the different styles. The first one is comparing and contrasting. Think creative writing in high school, where you
Yeah.
had to compare two different dogs or contrast the two different dogs. I don't do that very often. I can think of two layouts. One was one from when my son was a baby, and his face was next to mine. It was next to my husband's, and the title was something about like who's the parent, the mailman or the mother, because my husband works for the post office.
Ah, funny. Funny. Good play on words.
Yeah. So it wasn't really the journaling part. It was more the title that was the comparing and contrasting and the images.
But I think that's a good, when you're documenting your child, I think that is a good style, how you can look at characteristics of a child and compare more like mom, more like dad, more like mom's side of the family, more like dad's side of the family, or
Yep.
maybe uniquely all to themselves. Like, where did this come from? Because none of us have this, that kind of thing. I think definitely lends itself to that. I have done it. Oh, when was it? 2010. I went back home to my original hometown that I grew up in. And I went and visited all the places I remember from my childhood. And I've done one layout, I haven't done all of them yet. But the very first house my parents bought, pictures when I was a kid, and now I have a picture in 2010 of that same house and how it looks compared. And then I just did compare and contrast, like what I remember about the area versus what it looks like now. And it's completely different. Like,
Yeah.
the house looks a little run down. I mean, granted, it was like 40 years old at that point versus when my
Mhm.
parents bought it was brand new. Stuff like that. It was interesting. It's
Yeah.
interesting to do compare and contrast. You can also do it for clothing, your style, compare and contrast what your style used to be like versus what it is now. That's kind of a fun type of exercise.
Yeah. This is another layout I wish I had more journaling on. It was a comparing. So this was childhood home versus my like middle school years home. And my journaling is very minimal. It's just the addresses that I lived in. And I wish I'd added that when you add the zip codes up, they both equal 15.
Okay.
That's the only journaling I really wanted to add to it. And I wish I had put it somewhere on here instead of just the address.
So, what drove you to document that layout?
I found pictures of my old house and both old houses that I had. Like these were printed from one of those disposable film cameras.
Okay.
So that was really cool. And it's always been on my mind that I should always live in a zip code that adds to 15 for some reason.
Okay, cool.
Another one is lists. So you make a list of the things that you did during your travels or listing what you're currently working on. A lot of people do those currently pages and that kind of list. I've got a list here. It's a little bit kind of into shape, not really. This is more like my title, but in each of these is a list of things that we did that summer.
Oh,
And then
fun.
the journaling right here just talks about how we had a great summer enjoying the different activities available to us. It has been fun watching you grow into a funny little boy. But
That's
each of
awesome.
these little pie pieces has a different thing that we did during the summer.
I really love that idea of the pie chart. I think it would also, again, this doesn't lend itself well when you put your photos in page protectors, but I think it would have been really cool to be able to pop up each one and then had some sort of tidbit about what he loved best about the playground. He loved
Mhm.
the swings or hated the slide. I couldn't get him to whatever. That those would be additional ways that you could embellish the journaling and still incorporate it. Very fun.
So the next one is creative writing. So it's like,
Telling a story?
well, no. So what she is talking about is more like the format of it, like a police review, newspaper stories, letters, songs and poems, how-to guides, like making a poem as you're journaling for your layout.
Oh, okay. Okay. So
Um,
using a creative style, I guess. Yeah, which makes sense. We're talking about styles. So
Yep. So the example that she had was like a police report. You make the entire journaling look like a police report in the fact that who done it, what did they do, what did the crime scene look like,
right.
that kind of thing.
Oh, that
I
would be so fun if you had pictures of like a playroom that your kids had totally trashed. Do you know what I mean?
yes, yes.
That would be a totally fun way to document it, to treat it like a crime scene.
Yep, and like what evidence you found.
Or like, I don't know if you've ever baked with your son or something, how it gets so messy at the end of a baking session or whatever. You got flour, stuff spilled everywhere. That could be another fun one, you
Yep,
know.
yep. So I kind of took this as I got inspiration from Allie Edwards. She had those one little word things, and the word that I had was breathe. So this is a little graphic. If you don't want to look at this is medical things. You're going to see a little blood. It's going to be okay. So both of my sons really struggled with breathing when they were born. John Henry had a hole in his diaphragm, which means his lungs didn't develop at all, and he was an ECMO. My youngest son, JJ, he was born as a preemie, and so as a preemie, they don't remember how to breathe, and so they've stopped breathing. So I'm going to read this to you. Just a simple breath, that is all you need to survive in this world. For our family, this has been one of the hardest challenges we have faced. John Henry was born with extremely small lungs and was placed on ECMO within 20 minutes of life. Doctors gave us a 0% chance of survival. I was there when he turned gray. I was there when he had to be reintubated again and again. I was there for his last breath. Breathing is not easy. At 18 weeks, my water broke and we were given a low chance of survival for JJ. With little amniotic fluid, JJ was not able to develop his lungs like a normal baby would. On top of that, he came 11 weeks early. Because of his prematurity, his brain would stop telling his lungs to work, to take a breath. I was there when he turned gray. I was there when eating seemed to be the hardest thing in the world. I was there when he went home on oxygen. Breathing is not easy.
Wow. Wow.
Oh.
That is not who, what, where, when. That is fantastic. See?
Thank you.
Yeah, that had a lot of emotional expression in it without relying on the expression of emotions. Does that make sense? Do you know what I mean? Like, you're not saying I was sad, like you're not telling me your emotions, just the way that you're saying them expresses the emotions.
Sorry to
See?
bring it down.
No, it's amazing, and inspirational, right? It was almost like you were there in the moment with you as you were reading that. Yeah, it was really good.
Well, thank you. So that was just to kind of look at creative writing and using a style. I kept repeating breathing over and over again. I talked about in each of those paragraphs when they both turned gray. I kind of compared those. And then I also emphasized my journaling and my layout with this strip down here. It says inhale, exhale, exhale. And then one of the little, it says don't hold your breath.
Right.
It just emphasizes breathing as an
Right.
actual thing.
Right.
So anyway, the next one is songs or lyrics. Have you done that on your layouts where you've taken a song?
I have actually done a whole album. Yeah. It was a trip to Australia that I took, and every layout, the title is from a song. It's either the title of a song or a line from a song. And it started with the fact that I missed my flight in San Francisco. So I had a multi-leg flight because I was living in Canada at the time. So I had flown from Winnipeg to Vancouver, then Vancouver to San Francisco, and then from San Francisco I was supposed to fly to Sydney, Australia. And I missed the San Francisco Sydney flight. So I was stuck in San Francisco. And the way Australia flights work is they often only leave one time a day. Like they don't often have multiple flights, and they all leave at around 10, 11 p.m. Pacific. So I had a whole day to wait to get the next flight. And so that day in San Francisco, I went down to Pier, I think it's Pier 59, which is a pretty famous pier in San Francisco. And the song lyrics, Waiting on the Dock of the Bay, it just hit me as I was sitting there. So I actually used the song lyrics as part of the layout, and the title is Waiting on the Dock of the Bay. And so once I had that, it was just like, okay, what else could I do? And it just flowed from one step to another. And I had like, I don't remember all of the lyrics and song titles that I chose, but one of them, for instance, was my friend and I had gone on a hike, and there was nothing to see for miles until we turned around this one bend in the road, and then there was like a massive waterfall or whatever. And so it was a song from Pocahontas. I think it
Oh
was
yeah.
Right Around
Just
the
around the
River
river
Bend.
bend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was just things like that, and it was a lot of fun to just Google and search for different song titles. And yeah, I really love that. And then I also did December Daily, where every title is either a Christmas song title or a lyric. So I went to the zoo one day. The title was All I Want for Christmas is, no, what is it? All I Want for Christmas is a
Hippopotamus
hippopotamus.
song. Yeah.
Yep. And I had a photo of the hippopotamus, right?
Oh,
So
funny.
yeah, so just stuff like that. They're a lot of fun to do. I would really recommend that if you've got something that lends itself to
Yeah.
that, for sure.
One of my favorite songs, a cover by Ben somebody, I can't think of his name right now. And it's the Don't Worry About a Thing song. And so the layout I have here is don't worry about a thing, everything is going to be all right.
All right.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's my son sorting colors. And my journaling is today marks almost a year since I found out you could sort by color. It is also the day of your first IEP meeting. You will now get extra support in social skills, speech, and occupational therapy at school. I have faith this will help. So I use the song lyric as my title, like you'd mentioned, and then added some journaling with it. All my stuff is really sad today. Sorry, guys.
It's not sad. It's just emotionally driven, which is interesting because I think you don't give yourself enough credit with the journaling that you do. I don't think you are bare bones. I think you are way more expressive than you give yourself credit for.
Thanks. This next one is pictures of my husband and I. We found out that John Henry had CDH, and then we went to the beach probably a month before he passed away, and then a photo of us after he passed away. And it says, "It's not always rainbows and butterflies." You heard that song? It says, "Each of these photos may look like we are happy, but it is just pretend. There is a saying, fake it until you make it. Joe and I have had to do that more times than we care to count." The top photo was right after we were told John Henry didn't qualify for FIDA, which is procedure. Left photo was during a really hard time in John Henry's journey, after we found out he was having an issue with a floppy airway. The photo on the right was right after John Henry passed away. Our life has been extremely hard.
Wow.
So really leaned into the rainbows and butterflies on this one.
Yeah, yeah. And that's definitely a case where the title tells a lot of the story, but the true depth of the story comes through in your journaling.
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean? You
Yeah.
could have said, "Oh, my title's telling the story in this one," but without the other part, you wouldn't really understand it. It would almost seem a little bit trite. Oh, it's not always rainbows and roses. Okay, well, no, it really truly isn't always rainbows and roses, and here are the reasons why. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. On a happier note, talking about quotes, I was challenged to do a quote, and I had these cute pictures of my son coloring and painting, and he's a blooming artist is the title, but my journaling is Every Flower Blooms at a Different Pace, and that's by Susie Cassim. And so there's my quote, my journaling, and then this is my
Oh,
title.
nice. Looks like some Paige Evans there.
Yes.
How
I wanted to
appropriate.
use those bright, happy colors.
Well, and she is a real artist in the industry too, so it all lends itself. Yeah, very cool.
The next one that she talked about was interviewing. So you have a conversation with somebody, you can put quotes from that conversation, like, how did this make you feel? And then they tell you about it.
Right.
I think that would be interesting about the kitchen and your boyfriend.
Yeah. Where did you put this? I didn't
Yeah.
put it anywhere. What do you mean?
You take a picture of the foods that are in the wrong spot.
It's like good thing my kitchen's not very big, but it literally is open, 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 open. Like I just need to find a blank spot where you could probably wedge it in.
So we talked a little bit about the load challenge and how they give you a prompt and then a technique. Well, the prompt this day, I'll just read this to you. It says, I participated in my first load challenge and day 6 really stumped me. The prompt was to scrapbook your iconic images. I couldn't think of any, so I asked Joe, who's my husband, and he chose these photos. Later, I asked him why. He said, because these would be at your funeral.
Oh,
So I
wow.
have my funeral photos picked out. And I used like a funeral, I don't know, like a miss you type of kit. And so it says, I just miss you so much. I keep you in my heart. I will be with you forever.
Well, you've already done your layout. Yeah, they just have to pull it out. Wow.
Man, my husband, he comes up with the funniest things sometimes.
Well, but that's kind of when you think about iconic, like something that's iconic of your life. That's what they do at that time, right? They pull out pivotal moments and stuff like that.
Gosh darn it, husband. He's already thinking about my funeral.
You'll probably outlive him.
Probably. He's got the better life insurance policy. Have you done any interviewing on your layouts at all?
I haven't that I can think of. I don't think I have. I would like to do more interviews with my parents. They are getting older. And so I was thinking I probably should before I regret that. And when I was there in November, I had thought I would spend more time doing it, and I didn't. Part of it is I don't know what questions to ask. Like, I know I have questions, but I don't know what to ask. It sounds kind of funny, but
I think there's resources online you can look up. And maybe that's one of the things that we challenge our viewers to do is maybe a interviewing style.
Right.
So that is something if you guys would be interested in. We're thinking about doing some journaling prompts maybe every other month so that you can participate. Let us know in the comments if that's something you'd be interested in.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited about it. I think the thing with journaling prompts is it gets you out of your comfort zone, pushes you a little bit, maybe tells you stories that you wouldn't have told. For instance, like, would you have thought to prepare for your funeral? I mean, it indirectly happened that way,
Right.
but do you know what I mean? I think it was meant to be more a celebration of your key points of your pivotal moments of your life or whatever, not necessarily that they would be the end all be all for when you pass away, but you probably wouldn't have done that otherwise.
Right. Right. The next one is emotional. So we talked a little bit about how you want to be more emotional when you're writing. Reading the prompts that I've read or laid so far, I feel like I'm pretty emotional when I journal.
Well, you've had some pretty emotional events. Do you know what I mean? Like you've had some pretty big events in your life that can't help but be emotional. So I don't think there was any way for you to avoid that. In some ways, life threw you a curveball that forced you to have expressed that already. I'm not comfortable generally in expressing my emotions. I'm quite reserved. And so to actually put it down on paper feels very, like, makes me feel very vulnerable, right? And it's probably less so than me verbally expressing it to someone because, again, it's somewhat controlled who's going to see these layouts. But I think that's probably the biggest hindrance to me being more that way.
Yeah. So this is actually on point. Okay. So I have a layout here. It's called Teenaged Ink. And you can see this is a only journaling photo or layout. And it's not written in capitals. This is written in my messy handwriting. And it's kind of long, but I'm going to read it because this is advice for you and for my son. At some point in your life, mom will be wrong. All capitals. Mom will not understand your feelings or thoughts. However, she will always love you. But you need to find a way to express your feelings that is safe. So I recommend writing them down. You could use a journal, a computer, or even write letters and never send them. When I was a teen, my grandma died and I moved to Iowa to live with my aunt and uncle. I was sad because my grandma had passed away. I was missing grandpa and angry that I had to leave my first boyfriend behind. Then this new family had taken me in, but I didn't know them and they didn't know me. So of course I was angry. So I wrote letters to people, but never sent them. And I was able to get my thoughts out without harm. So this is my hidden journaling. You would never know it's there, but it's there. And this is a letter that I wrote.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Does this one go in your album?
No, this goes to my Advice from Mom album for my son.
Okay. Okay. Because I was going to say it sounded like it was addressed to your son.
Mhm.
So I wasn't quite sure where that was going to live. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So if he really got curious and pulled this out of the page protector, he could pull this little tab, which it just says hello. And this is a
Yeah.
letter that I wrote when I was younger that I found.
So it's the actual letter, or did you rewrite it?
No, it's
Yeah.
the actual letter. I didn't touch it. I just printed it. So
Yeah.
another double journaling, right?
Yeah.
The next one is a travel log. We talked about this with your travels. One of the things that a travel log does is do a timeline, right? So I wrote directly on the page, and I have a timeline. It's a double page layout of my John Henry's journey. So from September, I think 2019 to March of 2020.
Very cool.
So I was just wondering if you had done a timeline.
I haven't, but funny that you were saying that because I was thinking about this again. In prepping for these calls, it really gets me thinking about all the things. One of the things that kind of bubbled to the surface was pivotal moments in my life. And by pivotal moments, I'm not necessarily talking about certain events that are standard mile markers, right? The rite of passages, so to speak, like becoming an adult or graduating from college and getting married or whatever. I'm not talking about those. I was talking about more pivotal moments that if I look back now and think, if they hadn't happened, I would be a very different person today. And I thought it would be kind of interesting to do a timeline of kind of like, I hit a moment, boom, veered off. And because of that moment, that led me on this trajectory, right? Versus if I hadn't, I probably would have been a completely different person. And I could probably think about 4 or 5 really big moments that were character developing. I think that's probably more what I'm getting at, that
Yeah.
formed who I am. And I thought that would be kind of an interesting way to journal and maybe even do a little mini album and then have the timeline kind of at the front, almost like a table of contents, and then document each of those pivotal moments. Yeah, it would probably be obviously a lot of writing as opposed to photo driven, but that doesn't mean I couldn't incorporate photos. But
Of the event or whatever.
or whatever it was that triggered it, right? Some of it was like certain jobs that I've had that veered me off in a completely different direction than I would have otherwise. And, or like when I was in my late 20s, I took a year off and I traveled for a year. That was a very, very significant change in my personal development. So you could easily conclude photos from that time period, right? Of me doing different things and having different experiences to lend itself to that story. And it would almost be fun to have almost like a collage of like a grid collage of different photos from that, and then like a page of documenting. I don't know. It was just something that came up
Yeah.
with as yeah. And again, that could be a journaling prompt, right? Talk about something in your life that was life changing, and how did it change it? Why do you think it was life changing? What impact did it have in your life? So there you go. There's a bonus prompt for our viewers if they want to give that one a challenge.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, so the next one is conversations. Now, this is a little bit different than interviewing. Interviewing, you're asking questions and somebody's responding, right? This one is kind of documenting the conversations that you've had with people. So my example here is Suns Out, Guns Out. I'm going to read why that title is this way. I thought I was clever by tying the dog leash to JJ's walker to save my back. So I posted on Facebook, work smarter, not harder. And Joe comes back with Suns Out, Guns Out, only paying attention to the fact that JJ didn't have a shirt on. Such a dad joke. And I set him up for it too.
That's funny. Along this lines, what can be fun too is if you ever have text messaging conversation that is completely like off the wall or indicative of your relationship with somebody, a screenshot of that could be very fun and does the journaling at the same time.
Yep. And that's social media, which is the next thing, right? So this is actually from Scrapbook Generations. I was super proud of the fact that I had been recognized on a Facebook page. And look, this is my on
Look
on the
at
page
you.
journaling. I'm so proud of myself to be featured on a Facebook page. I want to become more prevalent in the scrapbooking community, and this is one of the first steps.
That's awesome. The other thing you can do that's related to social media is actually use the descriptions that you put with your photos as you're journaling. So if you post on Instagram, quite often you'll do a little verbiage on there. Well, if you're going to use that photo or similar photos from an event, just pull from your description because you've already done the journaling to some extent. Obviously, it was important enough to post, right?
Right.
And share with people. So why would you not want to include something similar in your scrapbook?
The second to last one, which I don't have an example of, is perspective. Melanie, I think we talked about this before the call about how you put yourself in somebody else's shoes and write from their perspective. So say you've got your dog and they're took a picture of their dog food, like, my owner always lets me drink water and I'm so disappointed every time that she doesn't have water whenever I come in from outside or something.
Yeah.
You write from the perspective of somebody else,
which is a very interesting way to journal. I think certain things are going to lend itself to that. And that goes with everything, right? Some of these styles are more appropriate for certain types of journaling than others, which not a bad thing. It's just finding the right thing to fit the circumstances. So are you going to document, because you mentioned your dog a couple times, are you going to document something from his perspective?
I don't know. She probably hates me. I can't imagine what kind of journaling she would write.
An opportunity, I think that would be really fun, especially if you've got kids and you take a photo. I don't know if you do this, but I've seen parents do this, so I'm going to assume that it does happen. How kids sometimes have like temper tantrums, or like they get really upset about something and like you think it's comical because it's so ridiculous, right? But now flip it and tell it from their perspective. Like, why are they so upset about this one thing?
My son hates car washes and I have no idea why. It would be kind of fun to write that one from his perspective.
Yeah. Like, what is it about it? So think about it. If you're a 3-year-old or 4-year-old and you're in a car and you see all that gloopy stuff covering the windows, or maybe you're being swallowed alive by a whale or something.
Like, why does it feel like I'm being trapped in this thing? Why can't I see out the windows anymore?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be fun to do that. And then, or the other one would be thinking about, I think, just relationships in general. If you try and put yourself in the other person's shoes to document that, that might be kind of interesting to explore.
We're getting to therapy, I feel like.
Yeah, these sessions have been a little bit deep, but that's okay.
The last one I have is just the facts. So you write out a timeline. Oh yeah. Easy peasy, right? So I did a layout with just the facts, and it is just a timeline, and the title is Perfect Timing. And 9/19/2019, John Henry was born. 18/2020, I found out I was pregnant. 3/11/2020, John Henry passed away. 3/10/2021, JJ was born. 3/11/2021, JJ was held for the first time around the same time that John Henry had passed away, exactly a year ago.
Wow. Yeah.
And then in quotes, it says timing is everything. So perfect timing, just the facts. And so you've got a picture of my John Henry in 2020 and JJ in 2021 when I'm holding them both on the same day. And that's all I have for examples. We went through a lot of layout.
No, you did a phenomenal job, and you have a knack for this. I don't know. I think you were letting me feel like I wasn't by myself, but you definitely have some skill when it comes to journaling. So thank you so much for sharing those with us. I'm sure everybody would agree that was quite helpful and inspiring.
Yeah, I hope by giving you guys examples, you can see different formats that you can put your layouts in, different styles of your writing, doing the who, what, where, when, why, showing that we're not perfect either in our journaling, right? Like, there's definitely layouts that I want to go back in and add some journaling to.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think you have to have journaling on every layout that's extensive or anything like that. Do what feels right. You can always go back and add if you change your mind about something.
Yep. Let us know in the comments below if you think you would like some journaling prompts to help inspire you to make more layouts.
Please say yes. Please say yes, because I would really like to explore this. I would like to challenge yourself to see if we can push our boundaries a little bit, or at least get some practice in.
Yes. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Check out Melanie's channel, and we'll see you next time.